Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. Oh, look, I have one viewer. One. Thank you. Thank you, dear wife. So, hey, hope everybody's having a great, terrific day. It is Friday, May 8th. I know we're all still mostly in lockdown, which we'll see how that turns out. But today's topic is about all those of you who are looking at possibly entering the workforce as a developer, and you're kind of wondering, am I ready? Am I ready to embark on this idea? I know maybe you've already had some, maybe you're self taught, maybe you've done like some boot camps or you've done some training and you're just kind of curious, am I really ready? Can do it? Should I feel confident that I can make it? So, today that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to see, are you in fact ready for your first developer job? All right, let me switch over to. I have, yes, indeed, a PowerPoint presentation. Oh, yes. Everybody loves PowerPoint presentations, don't they? But these are, so I wanted to put together some questions that I think you guys should think of yourselves. And if you can answer honestly yes to all of these questions, then I think that you're definitely ready to go. And just these are some very general questions, and you really have to have some introspective about, is this really true? Can I really say this about myself? Now, if you say no to some of these, if there's some of them that you don't think are, you're really quite prepared for, that's okay. You can still go and apply, but your chances, I would say, of successfully obtaining that job might be a little less than somebody who would be able to say yes to all of these. So just because maybe one or two or three or 10 of these you don't say yes to, that doesn't mean you shouldn't still go and apply. If you really want to become a junior developer, you've got to start somewhere. You've got to take that leap and try to get into the business. So, are you ready? Knowing when you're ready for your first developer job. So the first thing is, can you build it? Okay, this seems kind of obvious, I think. Can you build an application from scratch all the way to completion, right? So you can start a project, but also can you finish it? And the answer sometimes is, no, you can't really do that. Not every project has a completion. In fact, most projects don't really have a completion. They just kind of run out of steam. Oh, Survivalizer. Oh no, here's the questions an 8-year experienced guy can't answer. Yeah, that's entirely possible. Uh, okay, can you build an application from scratch all the way to completion? Okay, that's really, really important. And I mean from scratch. Like, can you take maybe the starter template that might come with like ASP.NET Core or something, and can you modify it and spiff it up and make it an actual full-fledged application that is usable, right? The second thing, can you deploy it? Do you know how to take your application and put it somewhere where other people can view it or use it, right? Can you distribute it to somebody else? That's a big one, right? Because just because you can make something doesn't mean you can distribute it, and that's a skill you definitely need to be able to know how to do. Can you use source control management systems like Git or SVN? And you know what? I totally just realized that I have botched. I'm supposed to be sharing my screen right now. Let me go back here. I blew it. There we go. Now you guys can see what I'm looking at. Steve, you're a sly one. Okay, so knowing when you're ready for your first developer job. I'm going to kind of basically start this over again because I'm going to probably clip this up later and post it to my regular channel. All right, am I ready? Knowing when you're ready for your first developer job. So first and foremost, again, can you build it? Can you build this thing? Can you build an application from scratch all the way to the end, right? All the way to completion. So this thing needs to be able to, to not just take that template that you get out of the box, but can you actually build something with it that is all the way to the end. Like all of the features that you've decided to implement into this thing, do they all work and is it ready to go? And along with that, can you deploy it? Right? Can you take this thing that you've completed all the way through and distribute it somehow? And that may be, posting it up on AWS. That may be packaging it in some sort of installer and distributing it. How do you deploy this application and being able to distribute it accordingly? Can you use a source control management system like Git or SVN? This is a really big one because managing your source control, managing your source code as you're doing the building is really, really important. You need to be able to do those things. Do you at least know one framework of each of the languages you're wanting to work in? So if you're in like .NET, for example, do you know at least like ASP.NET? That's probably one of the biggest frameworks. Do you know like WPF? Do you know WinForms is kind of out of the way, but with Python, do you know Django? With JavaScript, do you know React or Angular or Vue or Ember? Do you know a framework? Do you know a framework within each one of those languages that you want to work inside of? Do you feel comfortable with katas like FizzBuzz or the bowling score one? Another one I like is the Foobar Kicks, right? So you have to be able to do these katas. These are these programming exercises, and you have to feel comfortable that you can solve all of these things. So that's how this is just kind of these build it questions. Can you build something all the way to completion and be able to do it in a way that is good source control management? Okay. So the next thing is, can you reason it? So can you find answers to coding questions quickly, right? So how are your Google skills? If you're going to be a software developer, like Google skills, I think is pretty well known and established at this point. It's one of the biggest things that you need to be able to do is I need to be able to take this bug that's happening and be able to know exactly what kind of keywords I need to punch into Google in order to extract the right information. How can I, just skim over the results in maybe a very quick fashion, but get those answers really quickly to solve my problems? And then can you organize your code into something that makes sense to others? Right? Do you know where your code is supposed to belong? A lot of people, I've seen a lot of development stacks that are just, these code bases that the code is everywhere. And it bothers me to no end. And I guess that means, you don't really have to be able to do this because obviously there's professional programs out there that they just look like spaghetti. But if you can figure out a way to reasonably organize code, and feature foldering is one of my favorite ways to do it. But if you can reasonably organize your code to match the system that you're trying to build, then that's a really good sign. Can you make it work? Do you know how to debug? Okay, I think most of us probably at this point, most people at the very beginning, debugging is one of the easiest things, one of the first things that you need to know how to do. And I often see when it comes to debugging, one of the most annoying things has got to be when I'm working with somebody, they run into an error and they don't know how to debug it. They don't read the error, right? The error message tells them exactly what's going on, and they're not looking at the message at all. So are you able to reasonably look at the error messages and figure out what the problem is and maybe know where to set your breakpoints and go check it out? Right? So know what your error is, know how to debug it, know how to drop all your breakpoints in. Like that should be, it seems like a very simple, logical thing, but so many times I've run into junior developers that just, as soon as something doesn't go right in the system, it's like a deer in the headlights. They have no idea what to do. And if that's you, then I would suggest that you need a little bit more practice with debugging and encountering errors and figuring out what do these errors mean, how do I go solve them, etc. Can you write tests? One of the big pushes in the industry right now, and rightfully so, is automated testing. Automated testing is really the only way that you can know programmatically that your application works. Okay, everything else is about I click on this button, do I get the results I want? This manual testing. And we want to avoid manual testing as much as we possibly can because it takes up too many resources, takes up too much time of everybody. Somebody has to go in there and do all of this and double check it and verify it, and that's a lot of cost. So, can you write automated tests? If you say no to this question, you might still be okay. But if you can say yes to it, then you're definitely a lot further along and probably much more prepared to be a junior developer, okay, and start in that job. To go along with testing, do you understand that like the testing pyramid and the three different types of tests that you typically need to create? These unit tests, integration tests, and end tests. Do you understand what all of those are and why you do each one of them? What is the purpose of doing an end-to-end test versus what's the purpose of a unit test? Okay. And this can go several layers deep. Like, do you know inside out versus outside in? Behavior driven development? TDD? Like, there's a lot of other things that go around testing and practices for testing that you should definitely learn. But if you can at least answer this, like, can you create a unit test? Can you write a test? Do you know how to use the testing framework and do some coding with it? Then you're a lot better off than a lot of people that I know apply for these jobs. So, next up, can you work with it? Can you work with it? So, do you know the difference between object-oriented programming, functional, and procedural? A lot of languages actually incorporate or kind of do this dynamic language where I'm not using dynamic in the right term there, but there's a special term for this too. But there's like C#, for example, does both object oriented and functional, and you can also do procedural, but nobody really does procedural with C#, but you could. But yeah, like object oriented or functional, you can do both of those things in C#. You can do both those things in Java. You can do both of those things in JavaScript. So, there's do you know when you're looking at code that is object oriented and versus when you're looking at code that is functional versus code that is procedural? I mean, if you can tell those different paradigms from each other, then you're going to be a lot better off. You're going to be one of the probably better developers to start out with. So if you can say yes to this, then you're definitely on the right track. Do you know what Agile is and why we do it? And this is kind of one of those somewhat philosophical, abstract concepts, but it's a really important one. Do you know what Agile is? And do you really understand it? Like, if you were to walk into a development environment, do you really think that you would know what the ceremonies are, perhaps, that are around that, especially if you're in like Scrum? If you're walking into a Scrum environment, you're going to be trained on this because every business has their own quote unquote agile practices. But do you at least understand why you're doing them, what those procedures, what those ceremonies might be, what time boxing is, what iterations are, what release cycles are, software development release cycles, or life cycles. So there's some stuff to go along with that besides just, knowing the four values and the 12 practices or 12 principles, excuse me. So, yeah, definitely. Do you understand Agile? Okay. And then also, can you go beyond it? Right? So can you go beyond just, just the programming aspect of it? Can you kind of extend that? So do you know more than one language? Can you program in more than one language? If you only know one language, you're probably going to be in a little bit of, I wouldn't say trouble, but you're going to be very limited in what you're going to be able to assist with and help out the company with, because I don't know anybody right now that is just strictly one language. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. There are a few companies out there that do have just one language. Like, there are some shops that are, well, I can't even say one language, because even if you're doing, say with C#, you're doing just WPF forms, well, you have to know XAML, and XAML's a markup language, right? So you've got to know at least more than one language and be able to understand how those different languages work. But I would suggest more like actual programming languages, not just markdown languages. So things like JavaScript and Java and C# and Python and Ruby and Haskell if you want to, or COBOL if you want to go back. Like there's a ton of different languages to go out there and learn. And if you can learn at least two, right? Not just one, but if you can learn two, then you're going to be able to kind of morph yourself into whatever the needs of the company are, because you're going to be able to understand programming at a bit more higher and abstract level, because you'll understand how these two different languages operate. Even though they may have some similar concepts, you'll understand how the differences work and what the benefits of each one of those are. And once you understand the benefits of what each one of those are, you'll be able to understand how to best utilize that language for that particular circumstance. So definitely, it's good to know more than one language, being what we call a polyglot. Okay. Can you whiteboard or use a notepad to write code instead of an IDE code editor? Now, I put this one up here. You never write just up on a whiteboard, except for maybe if you're doing some sort of planning or something, you might whiteboard a couple of notes, but you're almost always using some sort of IDE or smart code editor that's specifically designed for the programming language that you're writing in. So I fully acknowledge that. But what this does is, if you can, in fact, write code without that IDE or without that code editor, and you could just go straight up to a whiteboard and start coding, writing code how you should do it, then that means you know the language well enough, right? You feel that comfortable with the language. Again, this is one of those things that may not be disqualifying, but in a lot of those interviews that you're going to get into, they're going to ask you to do stuff like this. They're going to ask you to whiteboard a question, whiteboard a function, or whiteboard, reversing a binary tree or something. They'll do some sort of weird kooky thing to you in an interview, because they're all computer science grads and took all this ridiculous algorithm stuff that they assume that everybody should know that nobody actually uses. It's just kind of one of those weird kooky things that people do in the interviews. I don't know why. Luckily, at our company, the company I work for, which I'll be able to reveal here pretty soon, we don't do that. We ask for practical knowledge. So, could you teach someone else how to code? And this is probably the one that I would put multiple asterisks around. Like, this is the big doozy. Because I think this kind of encompasses, and I've talked about this on this channel and other places, about this idea of being able to, I call it the inverse learning theory, right? Where if I can take my knowledge and transfer it to somebody else, that means I'm inverting the flow of knowledge, right? I'm taking it and I'm extracting it, and I'm having to use the different modalities to extract it from myself and give it to somebody. And that kind of gives you a very higher level understanding of what it is that you actually know. So if you think that you could take somebody who doesn't know a lick of programming and teach them how to code, then you're probably in the right place. You're probably ready to go. Okay, even if it's just some of the basics, at least if you really feel comfortable that you could talk to somebody and bring them along and train them on some of the stuff that you've learned, then I'd say you're definitely ready. So that's basically, if you can say yes to all of these questions, and I think I'm probably post this somewhere. I don't know yet. Maybe I'll put a link in the description somewhere. Maybe I'll do like a Google Doc or something that I post all these questions, or maybe the slide, the PowerPoint slide presentation. Maybe I'll post that up somewhere. And if you can answer yes to all of these questions, to every single one of them, you're ready. Okay, you're ready. You're ready to go in there and try it. That doesn't mean that you're going to get a job, right? Doesn't mean that you're right away gonna, oh, I got it. I got Steve said I answered yes to all of these. I walk into the interview. I say, you know what? I saw this video that Steve put up, and from Programming Made Easy and from Coffee with Steve, and he said, I said yes to every one of his questions, so therefore give me the job. Right? It doesn't work like that, obviously. I think we all know that. You're going to have to answer some questions. You're going to have to be able to ensure them that you are knowledgeable enough that you can be trusted on the team. Okay? And there's always personality things. There's always going to be personality issues that you have to make sure you avoid. Don't say anything really stupid while you're in the interview. Be charismatic. Be lively. Have some. Honestly, I've done an interview recently where the guy was smart, knew his stuff, but was really, really just kind of dull, and monotone and not very excitable. And it's like, that's not going to be a cultural fit. And it doesn't, I don't care who you are. If you don't have any sort of energy, it's going to be hard to work with you, right? It's going to be kind of hard, no matter how smart you are. And a lot of businesses are looking for cultural fits just as much as technological fits. So there's always going to be reasons, other things beyond just these questions, that are going to make you qualified to get that job. But at least on the technical side, if you can say yes to all of these things, I think that you're prepared. I think that you're ready to go in and start doing some of those interviews. Now, a couple of last minute notes about that, by the way. So never, ever, ever be afraid of hearing no. Okay, it's one of the hardest things to really prepare yourself for, right? Is to accept that no is a very likely response. Somebody's going to tell you no at some point in your life, and we all kind of we avoid that. We hate rejection, but inside of that no, you need to learn from the no. Okay, this is one of those things you need to learn from the no. What is it that kept you from getting that position? And you can politely ask them afterwards, what was it that I needed technically to understand or get to learn about, or what was it that, cost me the opportunity? And if you take that and you propose it to them in a nice way, not accusatorily, right? Just find out, what was it that I need to improve upon, and try to learn from that experience. The other thing is, you will never, and I mean never, be fully prepared for that first job. Okay, you're just not. There's no amount of preparation you can possibly put into this before you go into that job that's going to make you totally ready. It's going to be an adaptable situation. You have to be willing to adapt and adjust. Okay, so do that. Be willing to adapt and adjust. You're just not going to be fully prepared. There's no amount of videos you can watch. There's no amount of books you can read. There's no amount of projects you can start and complete. You have to actually go on the job, and then it's going to be completely different than anything you ever expected. Okay. The last thing is, I love this quote, and it's about that exact situation, that first time you get a job. I found this quote online from this guy named Ken Mazeka. I think it just totally describes it exactly. So your first job, you may be thinking you're going to go in there and you're just going to be in a room full of consummate professionals who never fool around, very straight-laced, have everything totally on board, and everything is going to be perfect and in alignment. We have procedures and protocols for everything. And yeah, there's some of that too, but it's pretty loose, right? So the the quote is, it's more like fixing a broken go-kart with WD-40 and duct tape while going downhill. Right? That's what the experience is going to be like. It's more like fixing a broken go-kart with WD-40 and duct tape while you're going downhill. That's what it's going to be like for an experience for you. So, and everybody knows this. Everybody knows that, especially for junior developers, that's the feeling when you go in and you start doing this job. Like, you're just going to get bombarded with stuff that you just don't understand yet. For the first 6 months, you're probably not going to be productive at all. And most businesses accept this. That's part of how they factor in the cost and return of investment on your job, is figuring out you're probably not going to be that productive for 6 months. Not really going to be able to participate in anything. We'll give them a lot of bugs. We'll want them to go through the code, get them used to it and comfortable with the code base, get them, pair them up with a couple of senior developers, get them involved in some of the Scrum meetings and the retros and yada, yada, yada. Give them enough time, give them 6 months, and then they'll probably be able to understand the code base and actually help us out and start to develop features. So you may have a level of expectation that is way higher than they actually have on you. but it's all a front when you're in the interview, right? It's like when you're in the interview, there's kind of this almost expectation that you better know everything. You've got to answer every question right. You better know all the skills that we know, and you better know all the technologies we know, and you better know exactly how we do agile and how we do the software development release cycle. You better know CI/CD. You better know AWS. Like, there's a lot of that fronting that happens in the interview process of we're the experts, we know way more than you. Ooh. But then you get on the floor and it's like, are these the same people that actually interviewed me? Because they're totally nice now. They're like before when I was scared of them, and they're like big bag monsters. They were like the bears behind me, right? With like that's how it was in the interview. Was these bears with these rockets strapped to them, right? They were like coming in bombing me with questions, and I just did my best to put up my national defense network and deflect as many of them as I could. And then you get out, and you find out, oh, they're just big, cute, cuddly teddy bears. Everybody's all nice. Everybody gets along, and everybody has this, culture of hanging out and getting along, and it's pretty cool. Being on the floor in a development studio is really unlike anything else. There are some places, obviously, that it's not fun. It's no fun. There's actually quite a lot of those where it's just work, 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 and if they're asking you about like how many lines of code you think you could output in a week or something like that, then yeah, I probably don't want to do that. But yeah, if you can answer those questions, yes to all of those things, you're ready to go. Okay, you're ready to start hitting the pavement and seeing if you can apply and get some of those jobs. So anyway, if you guys are looking for more advice on, how to be prepared on what you need to do, please just drop me your questions in the comment section below this video, down below. And I take all these comments and questions and suggestions that you guys get, and sometimes I'm able to handle them, and sometimes I try not to forget about them, but I know that they're out there, and I will rediscover them in like 6 to 8 months, and then I go, oh yeah, I was going to talk about that. So at least give me your comments, give me your suggestions, and if it's a really good one and I got the time for it, I will definitely cover it. So thanks everybody for joining me today. Thanks Survivalizer, my buddy. Way to go. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend coming up, and I will see you on the flip side.